I want to hit some quick technical stuff, then I'll talk about pound, shilling, and pence. Then we'll take your questions, and you can put those up on chat anytime. Bullet connectors. I'm talking to a guy, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I want to put bullet connectors on my wiring, but the tool, the crimping tool, you know, is $78 or $138, and it has to come from England, and let alone getting the bullet connectors." And I said, well, there's always a less expensive way of doing it. So you take the wire, you strip 3/8 of an inch off the wire, tin the wire, flux and solder, get it nice and soldered, take the bullet connector, put it on top of the wire. You're supporting the wire in the vise or in a pair of vice grips if it's in the car. Put the bullet on top of the wire, heat that from the top with your soldering iron, and just wait, and all of a sudden the bullet goes right like that, and a little bit of the wire sticks out the top. Easy, it's a great connection. You'll never have to redo it. It's better than crimping it. I've got the Lucas crimping tool. It's pretty handy. It's a pretty neat little thing. But that's because I used to do a lot of them. Prior to that, I soldered them. And I'm not sure I'd solder them now because the crimping tool works real nicely as long as you got the correct bullet for the wire. And there is a consideration there. I got a note about from a guy, Tom, and he said, what kind of oil can I use to put in my differential so it doesn't leak? I said, oh boy, that's a big one. Call me. Call me, because who knows, maybe the oil's coming from the valve cover. I had another guy who wrote, and he said he'd rebuild his engine, started it up, and he sent me the video, and up out of the stud, here's the nut around the stud, on the head stud, it's bubbling. It's bubbling there. And he goes, oh my gosh, you know, is something wrong inside? Have I ruined my engine? I said, no, it's just regular. It's common. As soon as the engine gets hot, first time around, it'll probably never bubble again. That's just stuff that's located on the inside from some moisture, some of the oil that was in there, stuff, the air, whatever, trying to get out of there. So that's what's causing the bubbling. No concern at all. I had another guy who thanked me for assistance. He had probably a lot of gasoline smell in his car, and I said, oh, it's always from the evaporative canister in the back, well, the condensing canister that's up in the wheel well, 1970 through 1980. And it turned out it wasn't. It was in the charcoal canister, and he bought new fish charcoal and put it in there, and it works just great. I keep a bunch of words, a list of words, and my own little dictionary of MG words, and they often have to do with the noises that you'd hear when your rear shock link is bad and you go over a bump, it goes cluck, and when the wire wheels are loose on the splines, it goes clonk, and if the rear anti-sway bar at 77 through 80 is bad, when you accelerate or decelerate, it goes clack. But I got a new word this week. It's called snick. That's when you're changing gears and you go to shove the gear lever into the next gear and the engagement isn't fluid. It's not perfectly smooth. It just catches, just not grinding. Grinding's one thing. Now this is just a snick. I thought that's so great. I've got to include that. I know a guy from London, England, who was having terrible problems with his carburetors, and I had another guy with fuel supply too. And I said, take the vents from the float bowls and put a tube down to and put it onto the float bowl vent. Purse your mouth around it and blow into it. That's going to pressurize the gasoline in the float bowl. Prior to this, you've removed the suction chamber, the spring, and the air piston off the top of the carburetor, and now when you puff into the float bowl over here, you get a column of gasoline that comes up out of the carburetor. If you puff too hard, you can get a column of gasoline 4 feet high, no problem. So you don't have to puff very much. But you puff into each of them, the left and the right carburetor, the same amount, and sometimes you can see that there's not enough gasoline getting through the jet, because something's been installed wrong. Sometimes there's too much gasoline. It's a real simple thing to do, cheap, easy, simple. That's what I go for first. And with that technique, I was able to help 2 people find the problem with their carburetors. There's still a problem with 3 synchro lay shafts for the MGAs and early MGBs. And the shafts, there were a couple of problems in production, and those lay shafts are still out there. You know, maybe they were never fitted. They went on eBay. Somebody took them back in, put them back in stock. You know, once you get a bad product, it's hard to get rid of it altogether. Anyway, some of the shafts are too long by a 64th of an inch, some tiny tiny bit, but it holds the front cover proud of the gear case when you assemble the whole thing, and it leaks. So that's been a problem for 15 years, I think, about that. Then the other problem with the lay shafts is that they're too soft, and if you hit them with a file, usually you can find out real quickly. You don't hit them where the bearings would be running, but in the middle someplace where the bearings don't run on them. And you can judge if it's hard or soft. So, Greg Swartley had a seized engine in an MG, and I said, well, you know, don't take it out of the car. Don't take it out of the car. Get it freed up in place. I've never failed to thaw a frozen engine, ever. I can always get them loose. Now, if the cylinder head's been off and it's been out in the field, you know, for 30 years rusting, okay, right. But I never encountered one of those, or one that I tried to get loose. So the trick is to get something in the cylinder, some kind of breakaway or PB blast or something or other, Marvel Mystery Oil, kerosene, something liquid in there that'll penetrate, and strip out the starter motor, the distributor, the heater control valve, the generator or alternator, so the whole right-hand side of the engine is clean, and use a pry bar. I can't even gesture how long the pry bar is, but get a really long, like a 3 or 4 foot pry bar, put it between the backing plate and the ring gear teeth, and try to move the engine. Try to move it the other way. Try it from the bottom, try it from the top. Doesn't work, wait till the next day, then go back out, try it again. Try it again. Maybe after 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 days, 20 days, it will come loose. And then you can hook the car up to a tow rope, pull it around the neighborhood at around 20 miles an hour in second gear, and that engine will get real loose. And then you start it up and go out and drive it. And if the rings don't seat, well, you haven't wasted a whole lot of time. But if they do seat, you've saved yourself rebuilding an engine. So if you want some more explanation on that, I can talk to you, some other time. I went out to buy a set of torches on Saturday. I needed oxyacetylene torches. I sold mine to Forrest, I guess, or maybe the people that kept the shop. I don't remember what, but I lost my torches. And C2H2, acetylene, that stuff is God's gift to a mechanic. Mixed with oxygen, you can get such a hot flame, and I needed a hot flame to get some frozen nuts off. That's the only real way to do it. So I looked on Craigslist, and I found these torches, and the tanks were full, and it came with new regulators and a new hose, and it's $400. That seemed like a fair enough price. So I go out there to buy them, and in the pole barn is a 54 Jag XK 120. It's got a whitish paint job on it. Doesn't look quite like a right color, and the underbody is kind of dirty, and the interior is kind of a mess. And I asked the gal, not that I was interested, I was just interested to follow the Sioux. I wasn't interested for myself. And I said, is the car for sale? And she said, would you want to buy it? And I said, no, but I know some people who might. And she said, well, will they give me $60,000? And I kind of jumped. And I said, 60? I said, that's a pretty tall price for that car in the condition it's in. She says, well, when it's all done, it'll sell for 140. I said, well, yeah, but you're going to have to put 100 into it. Oh, no, she said, that just isn't true. So it does, you hear this stuff. They're urban legends about people who think their car is worth a whole lot more than it is. But I ran into it myself personally. And then 2 days later, I had a guy call me up because his grandfather had passed away and left 2 steamer trunks full of coins, all cataloged. I'm a coin collector. And his mom, his grandma, wanted to pop them all out of their envelopes and roll them and just take them to the bank. So here we have within 2 days, two very great extremes of how people view their hobbies and the value invested. So I want to talk just for a moment here about British weights and measures, just a little bit. We could go on a long time. Maybe another time we'll talk about threads. But the weight, you know, there's a pound, and a pound works just fine. It's the same pound as our pound, but it's combined differently in England. You take 14 of them, you make a stone. Now, people and fish are weighed in stone. When you read a British magazine, it'll say 10 stone man. It's like, what in the world is a 10 stone man? Well, he's not very heavy. He's only 140 pounds. So stones are used for that. Now, 2 stones make a quarter, and 4 quarters make 100 weight, which is 112 pounds. So Paul Morrissey called me from the state of Michigan, from the Secretary of State's office 30, 40 years ago. He had a YT, and he's down there trying to get a license plate for it. And they said, what does it weigh? He's got the owner's handbook, and he tells me what it says inside, how many 100 weights and how many quarters. And I said, you probably think 100 weights, 100 pounds, you know, well, it's 112. You go, where does this stuff even come from? And of course, there's a history, you could go into it. And it's like, it's so archaic, you know, 112 pounds. But today, a bushel of potatoes isn't sold as a bushel in the United States. They're probably not even sold as bushels anymore. But a bushel of potatoes is defined as 56 pounds of potatoes. That's half a hundredweight. So some of the stuff still works through even in our own system. So the French and the English monetary system was the same. The French decimalized at the same time they decimalized everything, just when Napoleon came in. And there are 12 pence to a shilling, 20 shillings to a pound, and 21 shillings to a guinea. A guinea was that extra shilling, that extra 5% that you paid for extra special stuff like lawyers and doctors or a color television set. Those are in guineas. Now all this is gone. It all left in 1969, 1970 when they went decimal. The coins were a fantastic number of coins. There was a quarter penny, the farthing, a half penny, a tuppence, 2 pence, a threepence, 3 pence, a sixpence, which is half a shilling. Those came in silver. A shilling. Then in shillings, you had a shilling coin. You had a 2 shilling coin that was a florin. I had to put those into my gas meter in my single bed sitter when I lived in London. There's a half crown, which is 2 shillings 6 pence. A crown, which is 5 shillings. There's no coin for that except commemoratives. They'll put one out, maybe the Queen's bust on it for a special occasion or something. So it's called LSD. L for pound, S for shilling, and D for pence. You go, that doesn't make sense. But it's really French. L is for livre, pound. S is for sou, and D is for denier. LSD. So it's all gone, but sometimes you read stuff in our books, you know, in our workshop manuals, and all of a sudden they're talking about stuff. Here's a kid's, this is like a 7th grade math book from England that I picked up when I was there in 1972. And here's it's just a math book with questions and answers. And here's one. It says, what shall I pay for 2 stone 5 pounds of potatoes at 1 shilling 4.5 pence per pound? You know, I mean, you just reduce it and solve it, but it was a lot more complicated than decimal. I prattled on here for 18 minutes, so I'm going to take my chat and I'm going to go back up to the beginning of this if I can make it work, and I'll call on you. I'll call on you. First one, John Dykes. I saw you when you logged in. You can unmute yourself, John. from the greater Detroit area? Yeah. So
Yeah.
on John wants to know on 79B, how do you get the heater controls out of the center console? Because you can pull the console out about that far, and then the cables are on it. So what do? You take the two knobs and use a scribe or an awl and press in wherever the button is on those things, and the knob comes off. And then underneath there is a 5/8 nut, so you need a deep 5/8 socket and an extension and a ratchet or a screwdriver handle, and put that on the nut and spin the nut off. Now the heater control and the air control come loose from the console, and you can pull the console out. Putting it back in is a little dicier because you got to get those things sort of up into place. But if you tie strings on them or a wire on them, use mechanics wire, you can pull them through the holes and jiggle them and so forth, and then put the nut and the block washer and the flat washer back on. And before you put the knob back on, take a little slug of grease on your index finger, just a little slug of grease, and push it into the hole in the knob that the hex goes into, and you push it in, and so the grease pushes out the little hole. But that'll keep it nice and greasy for the next time you want to take it off. You don't have to fight with it. Does all that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was looking in the Bentley manual, and all it says is disconnect the cables.
No, that's wrong.
And it doesn't have the 79. It's got the one where the heater controls are up by the instruments, not down in the console. So I thought, well, that's the problem I'm having. I don't know how to get my hands in there to disconnect the cables.
We had a guy from Three Rivers, someplace, a policeman, sheriff, something, and he had a new radio installed, and they pushed some of those wires out of the way, and because those controls are there, he turned the heater knob and it shorted out like a green wire, hot wire, and for some reason the fuse didn't pop, and it burned up a lot of his wiring. He was so upset. Oh my gosh. But anyway, just, yeah, it's a straightforward job. Just take those nuts off. And that works 68 through 80. It's the same idea. You pull the knob off by depressing the little pin. If you lose the pin and plunger, Victoria used to sell those separately. I don't know if Moss does. I don't know if Victoria does it anymore, but they used to. So that's a straightforward job. Thanks for being on. Where are you from, John? I know where you're from, but
Chelsea,
Michigan. Okay. All right. So from Michael about your retorquing your head nuts. Michael, retorquing my head nuts, I noticed that one of the rocker arms is loose on the shaft. It moves 1/8 of an inch fore and aft. I want to replace all the rocker arm bearings and shaft. Is there room to slide out the rocker shaft above the radiator? What year and model are we dealing with here, Michael?
It's a 57 MGA with a 1622 engine.
Okay, so what I would, if you want to get the rocker shaft rebuilt, and what's that guy's name? There's a place in California you can send the pedestals and the rockers to, and he bores through the whole thing and opens it up 10 or 20 thousandths of an inch and just puts in a larger rocker shaft. You can do that in carburetors too. I wouldn't do it, but there's nothing wrong with it unless you go to change the rocker shaft again and can't get that oversized shaft. Mr. Tappet, I can't remember what it is, but in any case, take the spark plugs out of the engine, slacken off the 5/16 bolt, the nuts,
Right.
the 4 of those, and then slacken off the 3/8 and take the whole thing up. Just take it up. You aren't gonna, as long as you take the spark plugs out so that if someone pulls the starter motor, it's not pushing air and stuff up into the cylinder gasket. But it's safe to take that rocker shaft off.
So that won't hurt. That won't hurt my brand new head gasket then, just to leave that and send it.
I'm sure some people would weigh in and say yes, but no. No, that's something we did, you know.
And is there any time frame that, if it's off for a week, it's a problem, or if it's off for a month, when I have to send it away?
No, I don't think so. If you drained the coolant out of it down, past the top of the head, that might not be a bad idea. I don't know if it's necessary. It's a pretty flat surface, and it's still being held in place with 7 3/8 nuts, so it's clamped down there pretty snugly. But
And when I go to put it all back together, do I obviously retorque everything, but I heat it up and then do a second torquing, but then do I have to 400 miles later retorque it again, you think?
We usually did it initially at the end of a half an hour high-speed run, a high-speed idle, 2000, so the cam lifters get bedded in. And then again, maybe at 500 when everything sort of slipped back together. So.
All right. How would I find that guy's name here in California? Can I email you?
Maybe somebody else here can. Anybody else know who I'm talking about? Unmute yourself and tell us if you know. There's a damper doctor. He does just dampers, but I know there's
the same guy that regrinds the camshafts.
Well, Dave Anton, you could call Dave Anton at APT. He makes cams, so he certainly it's somebody out there, so he'd know who it was.
Okay.
So APT, Advanced Performance Technology, David Anton, he might know who it is. You're bothering him to call him during the work and ask him, but
all right.
Tell him hello. Tell him hello. I just can't remember.
One last comment. When I pulled the rocker arm cover off, the 2 little rubber bushings, holding it on with the nuts from the top, they were almost disintegrated.
Were they brand new?
Yeah, they were 4 or 5 years old, so they weren't real old.
No, I don't know where to get better ones. I don't.
Yeah, they fell into the engine, so do I have to worry about them? They're probably small. Okay.
No, they're. You go back to what they're made out of. They're made out of oil. So, they can't get through the filter screen at the bottom. Parts of it that can get through the pump, but it ain't gonna hurt anything. It'll get held by the oil filter. So.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay. I'm gonna mute everybody again because we got some background noise here. And now we have from Tom, he says, I believe my 73 MGB is running too hot. Okay, that's not a bad diagnosis to make if you've got a newer sending unit and cylinder head, which always reads too high. Tom, you can unmute yourself if you're here, if you want to talk about it.
Hi, John.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Yeah, okay, Tom Starkweather, all right. Okay, so is your gauge reading between normal and hot?
It's reading right at hot.
Okay.
We last week we took a nice little trip around Michigan, and it was warm out, and it ran right up to the hot most of the time. So I didn't really have a way to check it. When I got home, I took it for a drive, got it up to operating temperature, and with infrared light thermostat, I checked the heat, and I do have a new sending unit.
Okay.
Earlier, I don't know, in the winter sometime when I was out messing around, I had a 190 degree thermostat in it. So I changed it to 160. But
That's
when
too
I
cold.
shot that, well, when I shot that housing right next to the sending unit, it read 205.
That's real hot. That's real hot. So something else is it just.
Is it time to replace the radiator and that kind of stuff?
Something's up, obviously. So the question is, are you making too much heat, or are you not able to dissipate the normal amount of heat that you make? So the first thing you do is hit the timing, 32 degrees before top dead center, full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. Same figure for all of our cars except the twin cam. So do that 32 before at full mechanical advance. That means when the weights have moved all the way out in the distributor, and that happens up around 4,000 RPM. Vacuum disconnected. So you need to dial back time. What year is your car?
73.
Okay, well, you can do it with a normal timing light by changing where the top dead center mark is on the engine, or the timing mark anyway. And or you use a dial back timing light, make sure that's okay. After you're done with that, then it's like, you always do the cheapest, easiest stuff first, and you can put a hose in, take the bottom hose off the water pump, and put your garden hose in the top hose, and turn it on, and there should hardly be a prohibition to getting water through the radiator. I doubt it's silt in the engine. If you ever clean the engine out, there's all kinds of silt, but I don't think that causes it to overheat. Water pumps go bad once in a blue moon, and usually when they go bad, they quit working, so you have a real problem. It's probably not the thermostat, but everything's made someplace else now, and sometimes
Right.
in some of those places, the quality isn't too good. Make sure when you put a new thermostat in that you drill an 1/8-inch breather hole through the disc, right out the edge of the disc, so the air that's in the engine can get out of there when you're filling it up with water. You don't end up with an airlock in there. And after all that, you buy another radiator. Have your radiator record. The new radiators are what, 150 or something? They're pretty inexpensive.
A couple $100.
Okay. And then you can get the aluminum one, which is double that probably.
Yeah.
And triple that, triple the 200 is getting yours with a new core in it, because it just isn't very easy anymore to get radiators redone. So that's sort of the root.
Okay, so to start with the timing. Now when I did put that thermostat in, I did not put any kind of hole in it.
I'll do that, but you'd know usually right away in that the next time you went to check the water in your radiator, you say, oh my gosh, where's it gone? And you're able to pour in another quart of antifreeze or something or other. So.
And that's been fine.
Okay, all right. So that particular thing is not an issue. So it's either too much heat in the engine, or the water isn't circulating, or the water isn't getting cooled as it goes through the radiator. If you take the back of your hand and feel along the radiator at the top and at the bottom, or just right down the middle, if you can feel a section of it that feels stone cold, this is when it's running. It's incredible. You feel it and it's hot. It's hot to your hand. You don't want to leave your hand there. All of a sudden you hit a vertical section. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is as cold as a stone. And that means that the tubes are plugged up with silt. So you can have that taken apart and cleaned, or you can buy another radiator. But you can always try radiator clean out. It's just caustic soda, lye. Put that in there, follow the instructions, and there's a lot of stuff to do first before you buy the expensive radiator, even though that may be it. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
John?
Right. Yes.
John, what would you expect with an infrared thermometer, a normal engine? If everything's working good and your temperature's reading on normal on end, what would you expect the temperature to read there by the sending unit?
The temperature should read what the thermostat is rated. 160, 180, 195. I don't know about 160. That's pretty low, and that's a real bad number to use on the car anyway. But it should read what the thermostat is rated at.
Okay.
And you can also take the thermostat and put it into when your wife's not home, put it into her saucepan and put a thermometer in it and just bring it up to temperature. You can see when it opens. You just need like a meat thermometer or your infrared thermometer again.
Okay. Yeah, I just wondered, since you said 205 was pretty hot, I didn't know what a good reading would be with a temperature gun.
The truth is that the car will run just fine until it starts to boil. And when it starts to boil, then you know it's too hot. And boiling is at least at 212. And then, like in my MGA, it's got a 7-pound cap. So you get 3 degrees for every pound. So that's 21 degrees. So that takes it up to, help me with my math here, 233 or something.
Yeah.
And then antifreeze also suppresses the boiling point. So it doesn't start boiling until it's like really, really hot. So
Okay, thank you.
anyone with an MGA will tell you that I met these guys driving across the desert on I-40, old Route 66, in their MGAs, and in those old safety gauges, the temp runs along the bottom, and it'll say, 220, 230, and then you go up into where it says 100 pounds of oil pressure, because the needle just keeps going up around and comes into the territory that the oil pressure needle is supposed to be. In those cars, sometimes they run all day, real hot. So can't have it boil. That's it. So okay, I'm gonna mute everybody again. Okay, we got 148 people on. Kurt Johnson, we are reinstalling an engine and gearbox into a 72 MGB. It's got overdrive. Are there any special tricks regarding the gearbox cross member, the 4 impossible nuts to get to? So yeah, there are. Which one's the Jaden video?
That's the video on the MGP.
Oh, the one that I put out last night. Yeah, that's such a conflict in so many ways. You can sling the whole engine and gearbox in as a unit. We often put them in halves because there's so much weight, and sometimes it's just easier. But I don't know, maybe if you're putting the whole engine gearbox in, you got the bonnet off, sling the whole thing in as a unit. For goodness sakes, make sure that you check the lockout switch, which is the most forward left-hand switch right on the top of the remote control housing. Make sure that goes continuous when you're in 3rd and 4th or 4th, depending on what kind of gearbox is in there. But check it 20 times and make sure that there's nothing wrong with that switch, because it's the least accessible electrical component in the vehicle. And to get access to it after it's all bolted up, you have to drop the exhaust, drop the drive shaft, and drop the cross members and get your hand up in there and change that stupid little switch. So it's just a horrible job to do after it's together. So make sure it's right going together. Reverse light switch on the right-hand side, you change that from underneath, no problem. So anyway, those bolts, yeah, chamfer the holes, get a chamfering bit from the hardware store and put on your drill, and just put a little chamfer on the holes. Put your 5/16 18 tap in there, clean out the threads, make sure the threads are okay. Take the die or a thread chaser and put it on the bolt, and grind a point on the end of the bolt. Doesn't have to be a pencil like that. It's just sort of a blunty point, but a point, and all those things will help. Then also the butterfly, which is the piece that fits in on the inside of the cross member.
Yeah.
You put the butterfly in a vise and squeeze the ends together just by a 1/4 inch or something or other. So it takes a set just a little bit more in, and then start your bolts in from the bottom and leave them just as loose as can be, and don't even think about tightening those up until everything is in place. So those are all some hints, and just the patience and a good radio station and a beer, Although I've been told, well, as a matter of fact, I've experimented with it, and vile and discussing language is very, very helpful sometimes. So, yeah, and a 1/4 inch drive with a flexible end on it, sometimes that's handy. So those are all hints. So good luck. Where's Kurt? Oh, here you are. Okay, all right. Yeah, so good luck with that. It's a project. Okie doke. So we are gonna.
Don,
Yes.
you can also use, I got some wobble sockets, extensions that are
Okay.
kind of and they wobble, because I had a hell of a time getting those things in there. Even had the girls trying to use their little fingers to get in, but those wobble sockets seem to work pretty good.
Yeah, in high school, my good friend John Begg owned an MGA, and we didn't know anything about it, and he's putting the engine back in. So we got one of our favorite friends, Mary Lou, to come, and she was very thin and had very delicate fingers, and she went from underneath trying to get the bolts into the motor mounts. We just didn't understand how to do it, but little fingers are helpful.
Yeah, just one sec.
My experience with wobble sockets is they always wobble away from you. They never wobble to where you want. But it can be taxing. I'm muting everybody. Sorry, because of the background there. So anyway, thanks a lot, Tony, and Kurt. Thanks for bringing that up. And Phil Ryan, must be Phil Ryan. Thanks for the email. Phil, it's a pleasure. I'll look forward to seeing you sometime soon. And this is from Bryson Porter to everybody. He says he started the 63B in July after a couple of months of sitting, and it chugged a little bit, drove it a bit, and it smoothed out. But the ignition light is now on all the time. Okay, well, the 63B has a generator. So the first, let's do the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. So the first thing you do is polarize the generator by taking the wire from the hot side of the starter solenoid and brushing it against the F terminal, the smaller terminal that carries the brown with green wire on the back of the generator. And just brush that wire up against there. You'll see it spark, spark, spark. That's it. And then try it again. And if that doesn't work, then there's something wrong with the generator or the control box. At this point, I think it's probably easier to take the leads off the back of the generator, both the leads off the back of the generator, put a wire from one so you can touch the other spade terminal, bring the car up to 1500 RPM, something like that, and effectively jump between F and D on the generator. Just use the wire. Make the connection for a second, pull it off. It's either the 4th of July or it's nothing. If it's a great big huge flashy spark, the generator's okay. If it's nothing, there's something wrong with the generator. So that's a way to tell. Another way to tell what's going on, to see if it's just the ignition light, would be to turn the headlamps on, bring it up to 1500 RPM, and take one of the battery terminals off the battery. It either continues running like it should, or it kills. If it kills, the generator isn't working. So, or the whole system, generator and control box. So anyway, those are a couple of hints, not exactly 1, 2, 3, but there's only 4 things in the charging circuit: the battery, the wiring, the generator, and the control box. So check the control box, or check the generator. If that's good, change the control box. But remember, if the generator was bad, the control box can also be bad. Anyway, those are a couple of hints about that. All right, I'm going to mute everybody.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to mute everybody again, and here we got Ott Renkin, who says, I installed a Monza free flow exhaust system on my 78B, but its design causes the pipe below the rear axle to be only several inches away from the ground. I'm thinking to remove it and install the Moss stainless steel system. This is the one for the single carb, no catalytic converter system. I plan to remove the catalytic converter, less heat around the carb. So if you take the air pump off the car, then the catalytic converter no longer can work. So it isn't going to get as hot as it used to get. And it used to get, how hot did it used to get? That hot sometimes. You'd see them glowing cherry red hot. Oh my gosh, right underneath the carburetor. They were rushing the design, I guess. Anyway, so you can take that off. It used to be Walker made a front pipe because the federal spec 1975 MGBs didn't use the catalytic converter. So you could find the pipe, but that pipe isn't available anymore. There's now what they call a test pipe, and that gets you through what used to be the catalytic converter. All things being equal, I'm really impressed with the Bell, B-E-L-L systems sold by Engel Imports in Kalamazoo, Michigan. They are a huge British parts supplier. They don't advertise much. They used to be just wholesale, but they're happy to sell to you tomorrow. So write down Buzz's phone number at Engel, E-N-G-E-L, in Kalamazoo, and ask him about their Bell exhaust system. That number is 1-800 900 2905. 1-800 2905. I'm just muting everybody again because I got some background noise. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but there's a lot of exhaust systems that aren't fabricated to the factory bends. I don't know how they come up with the bends that they make, but there's some that just don't work. Exhaust systems are very difficult to install at home without a torch. We very often had to take the exhaust systems, even the stainless ones, and heat them up red hot with that oxyacetylene torch I just bought, and bend them a little bit. It's a process. It's a difficult job sometimes to get that exhaust to fit right. Fit it from the front all the way to the back, then go back up to the front and snug it from front to back, and then go up to the front and tighten it from front to back. Make sure you got your strap between the engine and gearbox and the exhaust so you don't break your manifold. Make sure that the center exhaust and the rear exhaust are factory mounts, real nice mounts. I know Moss has got those. I just got those from Moss. So that's it. And use anti-seize wherever you use those compression balls, those spheres to hook the exhaust back together. Paint that stuff up. Best anti-seize here, I think, is nickel anti-seize. I think that's higher temp than copper. Then it'll come back apart again when you want it to.
Is that a stainless steel system, John?
Yes, that is stainless steel.
Okay, thank you.
Bell system. Yeah. Well, I bought an exhaust system from another supplier, and my MGA sounded like a motorcycle. It sounded worse than my blown out exhaust. And I ordered just the rear muffler, and it's wonderful. The sound is great. So, okay. All right, I'm going to mute everybody again, and just so we get rid of the background noise. And let me make an unabashed pitch, since it's 7:45, to go to my website and hit the PayPal button. And I'm just so pleased to receive your donations. It's real nice. I hate to keep harping about that, but Truman Auctions, Marty. Do you have to remove the Armstrong front shock to service it on a 78 Midget 1500? Or can you service it installed? Well, you can fill it, but that's it. You know, when that car came out as a Bug-Eye Sprite in 1958, that front shock was okay for the front end weight that was there. But over the years, you know, they got reinforcing in the doors. And then when they went to the 75 model, they put in the cast iron Triumph engine, and the heavy bumpers front and rear, and that suspension is taxed to the limit. And so we changed the top shock bushings on Midget 1500s a lot, because the wheels would end up falling in. They'd fall back and in. You get this terrible toe out and a real bad camber. But you can do that. If the shock itself is faulty, get another shock. And my go-to guys, the guys I love for shock absorbers, if there's still commerce between Canada and the United States now, is Peter Caldwell at Worldwide Imports in Madison, Wisconsin. It's Worldwide Imports in Madison, Wisconsin. He's got wonderful, his shock rebuilding program is just dynamite.
So would would you send your core back to him, John, and he would give you a different one to come back, like a rebuilt one?
Yes, what they usually do is they send you the shock and then put a $100 core on it to encourage you to send your core back. But then for $100, he doesn't need it. He'll keep the $100, so he'll be happy. So there's usually a pretty handsome core charge on that stuff.
Okay.
But that he'll probably send you one. I know he can't do that with T-type and A shocks because he doesn't have any more. MG Bieber shocks, you could probably order 50 and not have to pay any core charge at all because he's got lots of them.
Yeah. So it's just on the right, on the passenger side there, John. It kind of it's like tapping in the floor when you go over. When you're going,
Yes.
normally on a smooth road, it's fine. But as soon as you go over a bumpy road, like slowly, it
Yeah.
goes like bang, 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 bang.
Right.
So if I
Right.
took that off and maybe try to, fill it up and see if you could get some.
You can fill it up right in place. You don't have to take it off. There's nothing you can service on it. I don't want to say there's nothing you can service on it yourself. I've taken them apart and tried to fix them before, but it's send them to Peter. It's
Send him to Peter. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've heard of him. Yeah. That's great. Thanks very much, John.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I'm going to mute everybody again, and just so we get rid of. And I think someone sent me the name of that rocker arm stuff. If I look here, rocker arm shaft. No, that's. Get myself tied up in email. Anyway, that rocker arm name will come out someplace from Phil Ryan. Is that who that is? Yes, it is Phil Ryan because he wants to have a contact for the Old Speckled Hen MG Car Club. They just had a meeting this past August in a wide open field. Social distancing, the works. It worked out just great, and we're having another one in September in Allendale, out by Grand Valley. So yes, I do, and send me an email. I think they got a website. It seems to me that there's a website, but I'm not sure it's updated. Now, Phil also asks, he's got a Triumph question here. The seals on the differential on the TR6 are shot, need to be replaced. What else should I plan to do while I have the diff out? Just all the seals, clean it up. That's about all. The TR6, the differential is held in place with 4 studs right behind the driver and passenger seats, and those studs break, and then the differential itself starts walking around, and as soon as one stud breaks, the rest. So you just want to make sure all those threads are nice and clean, so when you put it back on, it goes back on and nothing comes loose again. So, and there's always Dwayne Bailey here in Grand Rapids, West Michigan Imports. He does a lot of Triumph work. Call me, email me. Okay, well, I'm going to mute everybody again. Here we are muted. We're at 152 participants right now. Greg Swartley. Oh, here we go. Is just a note. He says 2 weeks ago you told me how to thaw out my engine, and it worked. But I already talked about that. So anyway, thank you for your comment. Can anyone comment on using General Machine Shops to ream kingpins? Oh, it's a project to ream kingpins because they're 2 different diameters, and you have to ream them in line, and it's so difficult to do it without the special tooling, and it's not impossible, but it's difficult to do with the tooling, just because you have to run it all by hand. So if there's somebody in Ohio, this is Robert Tedrow, gotcha. Okay, so there's got to be somebody down there who's got those tools. I had all of them: the 948 Sprite, the 1275 Spridget, the MGB, the MGC, and Forrest Johnson at Rusty Moose Garage has all those tools. They don't like to do bench work. And Bob, come on, from Columbus. He used to have a set of reamers, I think, but I think that was just midget stuff. So Rob, I don't know.
Was it, John, was it Folsom? Bob
Yeah.
Folsom?
Not Folsom. That's a prison. Forsblom.
Yeah.
Forsblom. Yeah, Bob
Yeah.
Forsblom. Yeah.
Is
So,
it-
but there's got to be somebody. Jeff is usually on here from Grafton. He's got a handle on the T-types. There's the Emerald Necklace out of Cleveland. Tony's on right now. Tony Shoviak from Waterville. You can contact him, or send me a note, and I'll see if I can. Somebody's got to have those out there. Sometimes you can put in just a new kingpin and not replace the bushing, but it's such a terrible job to get that all apart. You can buy from MG's Unlimited in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You can just buy a whole set. There used to be Dick Looning. He passed away. His kids are running it, and they did a lot of MGB kingpin repair, and you can just buy it all set to go. So that's an option too.
I'm looking for, I've got one that's making noise on my passenger side on the MGC. So if there's a replacement available, I would do that first. I bought a replacement set from you years ago for my B.
Okay.
So that's my preferred way to go. But since the resources are getting smaller and smaller, I thought if a guy sends me a line saying, yeah, I can do it, but he doesn't have the right tooling, I'm probably asking for trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So Forrest does have an MGC reamer, so you can call them. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll, for $1,000 deposit, they'll let you borrow it. I can't.
I don't want to use it. I don't want to mess it up.
Okay, right.
We'll get
Okay.
the parts from Moss and send it to Forrest. The other question I had on that same list on the suspension is evaluating old bushings. If they are tight and they move, do you let them go even if they're 50 years old?
No, if you're gonna take it apart, just do it. Now you've got your choice on the front end. Are you talking about the front end of the C now?
Yes.
Yeah, just do them. Yeah, you can get those. Victoria British has got a good selection of stuff for the MGC. Moss has a selection too, I think. The MGC Club probably can help you out, knowing where to get that stuff. But yeah, if you're going to take it apart, just back those torsion bars off, and Tony's got an MGC. We're back up to Tony again.
Yeah, you can go to Robert Kirk. Kirk Auto Fitters. I think he has a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Kirk, K-I-R-K, Kirk Auto Refitters.
He offers a polyurethane.
Yeah.
Machine.
Yes.
Peter Caldwell used to do that stuff too up in Worldwide.
Okay, all right. So we're getting some ideas here.
Great.
And Apple Hydraulics does kingpins in Nostrand, New York. I don't know if they do C kingpins or not, but Apple Hydraulics. So that's
Apple did my they did my brake boosters and my master cylinder, and they did a good job.
okay. Okay. So there are resources out there, and then of course you can always put something out on the MG Experience on Sky Knott's website there, and see what comes out. You probably get 10,000 ideas, but you have to comb through those, put them through a sieve. I'm going to mute everybody. Hey, where are you calling from, Rob?
North Canton, Ohio.
Okay, all right.
I'm just north of Canton, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Okay, all right. I'm going to mute everybody, and just so we get rid of the background. Now we got owner. Here we got from owner to everybody. I inherited one 4-speed trans, and if I get a Vitesse 5-speed, I will end up with 2 used transmissions. My question is how I can bench test them to know they are okay to ethically sell them. You can't get anything to drive the front of a gearbox usually fast enough. We had a device set up at University Motors. We could spin gearboxes, but it took a day and a half or 2 days to make that thing with pulleys and all kinds of stuff on it. And there just isn't any other way. You can take the side cover, if there is a side cover on those, of the Test as a Triumph gearbox, I think. And you take the side covers off, and if anything falls out, you know that something's wrong. But you can't say, and so you're going to have to sell a pig in a poke here, you know. So I don't know any way of testing those things.
Thanks. It's Wally, by the way, Wally.
Oh yeah, okay, Wally. Thank you very much. Thanks for your contributions.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute everybody again, and we are going to Ruth. Oh, Ruth loved the YouTube video. Okay, hey, yeah, that was a treat. Okay, Peter Koreski. John, last session you said that fuel hoses on the 77B are notorious for cracking. Since that session, I replaced all of my hoses, finding 2 with bad cracks. When I removed the separator in the boot, I noticed that something was heavy. I turned it over and rancid gasoline poured out. The separator was full of old gas. For how long, I'm not sure. The previous owner, that's the DPO, had mounted it horizontally with the 2 tubes facing up. Therefore, the gasoline couldn't drain back into the tank. I never paid much attention or knew what the separator's actual function was. You stated last week it will hold fuel if the tank is overfilled or parked on a hill, and only the fumes go to the canister. After some research, I found in MG Experience the correct way it should be mounted, and that is with one outlet at the top and one at the bottom. The bottom goes back to the tank. Anyway, he cleaned the charcoal canister and used the hints that are on my video and everything, that's worked out well for him. So anyway, that wasn't a question. It's just a Peter Kresge. Thank you very much for your comments and everything. And so now we're going to Demetrios, and he's having a problem with a 75B stored for 17 years. Just got it running. The plugs foul quickly. Black carbon buildup, but he rebuilt the carburetor. So Demetrios, unmute yourself if you're here. I see you here, okay? All right,
yes,
so
here we are.
Okay, so there's a couple things here. Rebuilding that Stromberg carburetor, you've got a diaphragm that goes between the body and the air piston, and each of those got little tabs on them, and you have to locate those tabs into the piston and into the body so that the air piston has the correct rotational alignment. If you look down on it right now, take the suction chamber off, the spring off, and look down into it, there are 2 air holes, and those air holes ought to be closest to the engine. So if
yeah.
change that.
Yeah, we were certainly attentive to that.
Okay, so then you got the needle. I had a needle on a guy's car the other day. I don't have it with me. I should have brought it. The needle's held in a barrel, and the needle hangs out the bottom, and you move the barrel up and down, it moves the needle, and there's a spring in there. But there's a little pin in there that holds the needle and spring assembly down. The little pin on this needle had broken. The needle had hopped up 1/4 of an inch. When you're making those fine adjustments, you're making them in several thousandths of an inch at a time. So this 1/4 inch jumping up pulled the needle out of the jet, and it was running incredibly rich. Another reason is the air cleaner. The air cleaner is plugged up. It looks like fills up like a Electrolux vacuum cleaner bag. It gets dirty from the inside out. Then there's probably what is the problem, that's the choke. So the choke, you can take the heat mass off the choke assembly and make sure that the finger in the hole in the bimetal strip, that those are properly placed. You can take the choke right off the carburetor with the 3 slotted copper colored screws and just pull it out of the way. It won't leak or drip or anything. Start up the car and see if it runs 100% better now. If it does, and there's something wrong with the choke, you can email me tonight at the conclusion of the seminar. You can email me now and ask me to send you my instructions about rebuilding the Stromberg carburetor, because there's some other stuff that I've included that wasn't in the factory stuff, because the factory didn't know that it was going to be a problem out in the field. So, but it's too rich. That's the problem. So air cleaner, alignment, needle, float height. I assume you've got that correct. And the choke, and it's almost always the choke.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Hey, as an aside, the horn, unusually that little plunger that sits behind the center of the steering wheel, melted down the other day. Just
horn got stuck on.
Yeah, the horn got stuck on, and that thing melted down.
Nothing takes more current in your car except the starter motor. The horns draw a huge amount of current. So get a set of air horns. Go to Pet Boys, go to Napa, go to your local grocery store that's got an automotive section. Everybody sells air horns, and buy an air horn kit with a compressor on it. Klaxon. It is so shrill and they're so bright with their noise that they'll turn heads, which is the function you want when you hit the horn. So, and just buy a new, you have to take the steering wheel off and then pull that thing out. And if it doesn't pull out, because it looks like that piece in there looks like from a ballpoint pen, except instead of having ink inside it, it's got a little brass hexagonal pieces and springs and straps and stuff. So.
Yep. Thank you very much. No, we got that out, and so appreciate it. We'll look at the choke and the needle settings and all of that, and
email me.
We'll look for your instructions. Yep. Thank you.
Where are you calling from?
Just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. Last week we had lots of people from Pennsylvania. So. All right.
Yeah. So this is a car. It's a car I've had for 40 some years and garage for 17 of them.
Good for you. The brakes work okay?
Yeah, rebuilt those over the winter.
Okay, good.
Put new fuel cylinders and all of that. So yeah, it's when it's running, and we've been running it around the yard, not street worthy yet. So it's been a hoot as it's before it gets too fouled up. So we're starting and stopping quite nicely.
The only way to clean carbon off plugs, because a brand new set of plugs carboned up don't work, but once they're clean, they're new plugs again. The only way to do that is in a sandblaster, or you put them in your oven and put your oven on self-clean, and it'll reduce the carbon to ash. But you have to do that only if your wife isn't around, because if you find spark plugs in the, let me tell you. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute everybody again so we get rid of the background noise, and we're going to go on to Judd. And Judd says, I'm pulling the engine, and I don't know what year and model, so you can unmute yourself here. The workshop manual indicates removing the carburetors and pulling the engine with the intake and exhaust manifolds attached. It looks easier to leave the carbs attached to the intake manifold and remove the manifolds before pulling the engine.
John, that's a 53 MGTD, 2 SU carbs.
Okay. Well, it's easier. It's easier if all that stuff is off. Take the. It's just easier. What do you take? What are you pulling it out for? To do a clutch or what?
No, it's overheating, and I had the radiator reboard clean, boiled out. I'm probably going to put a new water pump on it, and I've got a leaking freeze plug, a Welch plug, whatever you call them. And so I'm going to put all new. I've got the plugs from Tom Lang, and I'm going to put all new plugs in it. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to check and see why the water's not flowing through the engine. I can drive all day in 90-degree weather on flat roads and everything is fine. But as soon as I stop, the temperature runs up, like you were talking about, up into the oil pressure range. And if I put any load on it, I live down in South Carolina in the western part, and we drive up into the mountains 3 or 4 times a month. And when I start going up those grades, it's supposed to be a non-pressurized system. Well, I stopped one time and the temperature gauge was up in the oil pressure range. And when I took the cap off, it blew up over 10 feet in the air.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So
I think the engine's full of crap.
yes, one of the last videos I did in October. In October, I made them in Texas. I made it at Rich Caldwell's house. He had the same thing. You could hear the engine hissing when it got hot. I said, it's an open system. This can't be. So we cooled the radiator down before we took the cap off. And I found the tube that came off the radiator. And I put a hose to it and blew into it. It was plugged, dude. It was plugged. And his whole system was pressurizing and the car ran hot for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, so
I get copious water out that tube. It's not plugged.
Okay, good.
That works, and the drain on the block works. I just had the feeling that it's not adequately flowing water through the block.
Well, again, it's either the engine's making too much heat or you can't get rid of the heat.
Right.
So
right.
if you're going to take the engine out, first of all, I tell you, set the timing at 32 degrees or use your test light and set it 0 static.
Right.
Either way is acceptable because it's probably got a 40152 distributor in it with a 16-degree advance. That gives you 32 degrees if you start at 0. So
right. Yeah, conventional and conventional points and plugs and points and condenser.
So I take the carbs off, I take the manifolding off, the starter motor off, generator off. Just get it stripped on, get it down on an old tire, get it down horizontally and drill and then drive out every one of those freeze plugs and get your power washer out or get your buddies to help you put it in the back of the truck and take it to the quarter car wash and just blast it away until you're sick of blasting until you don't see any more red junk come out of it.
That's what I want to do. The little intake manifold, it's got the 2 carburetors attached to it, and it's got those 4 bolts with little
banana clamps.
Banana clamps.
Yeah.
It looks like I can just take the 4 banana clamps off, and the whole thing will come off the band.
Sure, you can.
Okay.
You can.
Thanks.
And make sure that you use JB Weld on those freeze plugs after they're set and installed. Okay, wipe that around the circumference so that it provides an additional barrier to popping out. It's so horrible to lose those freeze plugs. So,
you mean put the plug in, get it dimpled where it's set, and then put the JB Weld around it?
Yes, sir. And
okay, I never would have done that.
Yep, that's a trick that we just finally ended up doing because you rebuild an engine for somebody and they're 200 miles away from my shop and a freeze plug pops out. It's like it isn't worth the tow back. We discovered pretty early on that putting JB Weld, and you can't see it. If you leave the engine horizontal, and because that stuff's plastic and it moves, before it sets up. But put it in, just let it lie horizontal, get a nice thing, and if you even have to, you can sand it a little bit. But usually it's nice and smooth, and put some engine paint on it. You never see them. You'll never see it. So and it's such a good thing to do. Let me tell you. Okay.
So as a driver, it's not a show car.
Okay, where are you calling from? North Carolina.
South Carolina, a little place called Gallonsville up in the north.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody, and then we're going to go on to our next question here. We got 140 people on tonight. from Paul to everybody, 77 MGB with a lowering kit, stock front and rear sway bars. Is a three-quarter front bar beneficial? Just thinking of replacing bushings with polyurethane. What do I think about it? The existing sway bar is plenty big up there. That's a 5/8 sway bar. It's plenty big, especially with the car lowered. And you've got a rear sway bar in the 77. Those are nice. Those things, they really, you know, I mean, if you don't like rubber bumpers, you're screwed because they got rubber bumpers. But the 77 through 80s are as nice as the MGBs ever got. Gosh, the engines are free revving. You know, they haven't got much internal weight in them. The heater controls actually work. You can get a hold of them. You can get a hold of the knobs and turn them. Hard to get them in and out, you know, the console, but they actually work. It's comfortable. It's the consoles, the gauging, everything's nice about those cars. The sway bars are just fine the way they are. And I'd only change the bushings if yours look like they're starting to fail. The A-arm bushings always fail, and you never ever use original A-arm bushings. You either use the V8 bushings, which you've got a steel sleeve in them, or you go to the red or the black polyurethane bushings. But make sure you follow their advice and put on the lubricant that they tell you to. Otherwise, it'll squeak big time. So, and is Paul still on? Don't hear from Paul, so we're going to mute all again. So we don't know where he was asking his question from. So Larry Maselli, we've got a 52 TD that's been restored, starts, runs fine. But as it gets warm, when I engage first gear, I get an increasing amount of clutch judder. I'm thinking oil leakage from the rear main. What's going on? Well, again, cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. Sit in the car without it running. Put your foot on the clutch to press the clutch all the way to the floor while you look at the gear lever. And as you press that forward, if the gear lever moves to the rear, which it wants to do because that's where it's pivoting up on the engine, then there's something wrong with the rear mount on the gearbox. So, and that can cause clutch judder. You can't release the clutch evenly. Another problem is the engine, and the engine sways back and forth. I don't know why it took them until 1954, 55 to come up with a saddle mount, you know, but the TD is put on this flat mount, and then you got that bar up there, that the adjustable nut on it and so forth, so you can move the engine back and forth. But all those bushings are woefully inadequate for the job. And if the engine's swinging back and forth as you're letting the clutch out, because the throttle is mechanical, I mean, it isn't got a cable, it's attached to it, the whole car can start to shake real badly. Another reason, of course, is oil on the clutch. But since you do the easiest, cheapest, simplest stuff first, go for unusual engine mounting and see if that does it. We had one guy's car one time that we could not solve the judder, and we went back and put a cable clutch on it that they were using in 1950. There were problems with those or the cost or something. And they switched over to a different style of clutch that we're used to now. But the first clutches were cable clutches, and they weren't tied to the engine like the more modern, the ones we're used to are. And therefore, they're not, the engine isn't subject to all that movement, nor is the clutch. So, you know, those are just some ideas. But and there, of course, there is no rear main seal on the T-type engine. It's a real bugger getting that sorted out. So
yeah, I meant that I hadn't done the modern upgrade that Moss sells. I couldn't find a machine shop to do it.
Yeah, but well, if you get the bottom end of the engine a line board, ALIGN, a line board, of course the engine has to be totally apart to have that done. and they size it to the scroll thread on your crankshaft, it works great. You don't need a rear seal. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Where are you, Larry?
Mount Dora, Florida.
Hey, Florida. Welcome, Florida. Okay. Well, so this is cooler up here. Thanks, Larry. I'm going to mute everybody, and we're going to go on to the next question. Steve Smith. Hi, everyone from the UK. Steve, are you still on, or did you finally go to bed? No, he probably got pissed and went to bed. So, all right. From Ruth Arnold.
Sorry, John, I am here.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right.
I'm from the UK.
Where are you calling from? I know you're in the UK, but.
Near London.
Oh, all right. Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for listening. What year model do you have?
Very hot over here. Very un-UK like.
What year and model do you have, Steve?
I've got a 78 1500 midget.
Okay. Nice.
Much modified.
Yes. The cars are much more modified in England than they are here. I know that. So, well, anyway, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Always enjoy your seminars, John.
Thanks. So we're going to mute everybody again, and we're going on to Ruth Arnold, who writes and says, the most extravagant purchase of my teenage years was a pair of shoes that cost 5 guineas. So there we go. There we go. You paid that extra percentage, that extra 5%. So you didn't have to shop with a hoi polloi. Got 5 guineas. That's cool. All right. We're going on, but Ruth, where are you from now? You're not from there now. You're from Pennsylvania, aren't you? Is Ruth still on? We'll wait for.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I'm from Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, all right. Okay.
But not originally, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I've got some medical bills that my grandfather kept. His wife had an operation in 1910 in London, and it was all in guineas.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I go over to the UK now, I have to think quite carefully about the new money because I'm still in pounds, shillings, and pence because I've lived here for 50 years. But I'm getting used to it. But I love my MG. I've had her for 45 years, and she's my only car, and I love her.
Wonderful.
I was out in her today.
Wonderful. I was out in mine today too. I hope we're not rare birds here. So, well, thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you we really enjoy these things that you do. They're great. Thank you.
I'm going to mute everybody again, and we're going over to Severio, who says, I'm getting a clucking more than a clunking sound out of the rear end of my 78B. 78B. I understand this may be a common thing as a result of bushing wear. How difficult to repair, and what are the implications if I don't get to it immediately? So anyway, Severio, do you have wire wheels or disc wheels?
Disc wheels on my 78B.
Okay, disc wheels. So we're home free. It can click till the cows fly. It ain't gonna make any difference at all. But eventually it bugs you. Eventually, it's just like, come on, fix me. That's why it's talking to you all the time. So if it's the sway bar, that's a real loud clack. And that's when you accelerate and decelerate. Say you're at 30 miles an hour and you're in second gear. I mean, you really get some torque into it. And if you get a clack, that's the anti-sway bar. Then there's a clicking a clunk that you can pick up when you decelerate and then re-accelerate. And there are some washers, shims, behind the differential and pinion gears, spider gears within the differential. And those get all the washers are phenolic. Why would you put a plastic washer someplace in the drive line? But anyway, they did. and those go bad all the time and get chewed up. And then the spider gears have got all this extra slop, and between decelerating and accelerating, they change their positions and can make quite a noise out of there. And then there's the shock link that's connected to the rear shock at the top and the leaf spring at the bottom. And those should be absolutely firm. They shouldn't move at all. Those are the ones that cluck if they're loose. So.
Okay, well, I'll check those. And the reason I use cluck, it sounds like a muted clunk. And I'm just coming back to your earlier session about the noises that your car makes. So, and the other thing was the thrust bearing, and I guess that's what you were referring to, or
thrust washers, yes.
Yeah, that we were referring to there. So, if I decided to replace those, is that a difficult job? I can do it on the.
No, but I just had a guy today ask me, he said, you know, you don't have enough YouTube videos. Like, okay, I don't. And so I'm trying to think of where I can come up with a differential that I can change those spider gears in and, you know, do a YouTube video. So I'm thinking about it, but I do have instructions on how to do it. If you want the instructions, send them to me. It'll take you the better part of the day, just because if you don't have a hoist, you got to get the car up and drain the oil out of the differential and take the whole left rear side of the rear axle apart and pull the half shaft out. After that, it's easy.
Yeah, after that.
After that, yeah. So anyway.
Okay, I'll send you an email and request that. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay. And I'm muting everybody. My good friend Rich Caldwell from Houston, Texas, who was here in town today, gave him a ride in my MGA today. Keeps saying, put my name and my website, my email address up behind me, rather than my reel-to-reel tape recorder, so people know where to get it. But it's John Twist, my name, at universitymotorsltd.com. And you can go to my website and you can find it there too. So now we're down to Chris McComb. Oh, and it's just compliments. It isn't just compliments. Thank you very kindly, Chris, for this. And Chris must be maybe weighing in on our earlier comments about the rocker shaft. Tap it, rocker. Maybe it'll boil out by the end of this. And Chris says the only guy he knows in California is Basil Adams. Basil Adams has a lot of parts that he's gleaned from sources unknown that help us out in our goal for better quality parts. He still has Glacier and Vandervelde bearings and original AE pistons and stuff. So they don't cost the same as the modern stuff that's made in our favorite Southeast Asian country, but anyway. Okay, so now we're going to Robert Connect. And you can come on here. It says, on Sunday, my right caliper seized. It was smoking. When it cooled down, it was normal, and I intend to replace the calipers. Do I need to change the rosters?
Rotors, sorry
Okay,
about that.
I couldn't get there as well, if they look okay. And then there's a problem with the starter motor. So what year's your car?
72B, John. You've seen it at up in Canada when we're up there.
All right. Okay. So almost always the reason the caliper seizes isn't because the caliper's bad, but because the hoses are bad. So you can, with your foot, you can push fluid through a crappy hose and it gets into the caliper piston. You take your foot off and it's just the rubber tension on the rings and the caliper and the vagaries and the rotor that knock the pads and push the pads back off. So it's always the brake hoses. Brake hoses are good for about 10 years. If your brake hoses are older.
They're about to, I guess. So you think I should do the hoses before I go buy the calipers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because calipers hardly ever fail, quite frankly.
When I cooled down, I mean, it was bad. The thing was smoking.
Yeah.
And when it cooled down, it was normal. I had the car towed anyway, because I didn't trust it.
Yep.
my bride was in the car with me, so, you know. But the other question is, yeah, so that's
Well,
a cheap
if you
repair
put,
then.
if you put the new hoses back on and you go to bleed it and you notice that one of the calipers is leaking, look for it from the
Yeah.
heat that's destroyed the rubber seal. Okay, do that. And you can
Yeah.
buy, Moss has got rebuild kits, and Engel does also. Ingles has got stainless steel pistons, and you can rebuild.
Oh,
more.
Eagles has stainless steel. That would be nice.
Hey. So,
That
but
would be
they don't
nice.
rust.
Yeah.
They don't
John,
rust.
yeah, now to the starter issue. It sounds like it's not engaging. It's grinding.
That's weird. That's really unusual because it's a pre-engaged starter. So when you hit the starter motor, the starter motor teeth jam into the flywheel and then start to turn it.
Yeah.
The starter motor can't run unless the solenoid has pushed the gear into the flywheel, just because of the distances and how the solenoid works. The same solenoid that pushes the gear into the flywheel is what makes the connection to the starter motor and causes it to start spinning. So there's a Sprague clutch on the starter motor.
Right.
So that if you engage your starter motor while the car is running, or more commonly, is that the car starts to start up, and all of a sudden, picks up above 20 RPM. Instead of carrying the starter motor at 200,000 RPM because of the gear ratio, the Sprague clutch lets it freewheel. But sometimes that fails. That Sprague clutch fails. So these are all things that can be attended to by a local starter repair shop. You can go to Pet Boys or any other place and buy a rebuilt starter, and 1 out of 2 work. They're guaranteed to work, so it's just just the difficulty.
Give them another one.
Well, it's
No.
that's just the way it is. There aren't any new ones. So my comment always is take yours and take it to your local starter shop. And he's worked on them before or something just like them. And he can make yours work. So give me a call
I
tomorrow.
hope I didn't mess up my ring gear.
Call me tomorrow. Let's talk some more. I got to think some more about this. This is kind of a weird one.
What time do you want me to call, John? That's kind of you.
Afternoon.
Great.
Afternoon. It'll be fine.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, where are you calling from?
Sussex, New Jersey, John.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. So we're going to mute everybody again. Here we're on mute, and we're going down to John. John says, Tom Story asked you what you used on the rear pumpkin plug to keep it from leaking. I would like to ask you about the front bumper installation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm reading this. This is what year is this car?
Oh, it's on an MTA, what it is, John.
Okay.
And I've ordered a reproduction bumper. And when I got a hold of it, the bumper that was on there was about a 3/8 of an inch on that lower lip. This one is about 7/8 to an inch. And to get at those nuts on there for the brackets, you just can't get at them. It's Satan all over again.
Well, how long ago did you buy the bumper?
Pardon?
How long ago did you buy the bumper? Can you send it back?
I just got it within a week.
Okay, well, you can talk to whoever sold it to you and send it back. Most everybody is agreeable to that kind of stuff. They want to keep us all happy. We are the people who keep them in business. And other bumpers are available from Moss, Victoria British. I don't know what kind of Victoria British has. And then Cecilia probably has her own at Scarborough Fair. And I don't know anyone else who has them. But yeah.
John, I believe I got it from Little British Car Company, and Jeff got it from Moss, I believe.
Yep.
Which has kind of surprised me. I'm used to putting on bumpers. It'll take me about an hour, maybe 2 hours to put a bumper on any car. This one is, like I said, I've been at it all day and it's been frustrating me. And I thought I would bring that over to you about the extra lip at the bottom. But Tom asked me what you put onto those drain plugs on the rear pumpkins to keep them from leaking. And I don't want to forget him.
Yeah. Usually it's not the drain plug that's leaking. It's just the drain plugs at the lowest point. So any oil that comes off the front seal of the gasket ends up down there and it looks like it's leaking. But I would just use either Ultra Black or the Right Stuff. I mean, you can get Teflon tape and put it on there too. But just that gasket compound will work. The Right Stuff or Ultra Black made by Permatex.
All right. Thank you, John, very much.
You're very welcome. Where are you calling from?
Big town of Wakeman, 350 people. Over there by Cedar Point. You know where Cedar Point is. You're a Michigan boy.
All right. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to mute everybody here, and we'll go on to our next one. Thanks, Tom. This is, here we got Simon to everybody, and if you guys can go over in the chat group too, and this is rockerarms.com, rockerarms.com, okay? So Rocker Doctor would sound pretty good, but rockerarms.com, so there's someplace that you can get that MGA thing set. Okay. Kurt Johnson, oh, he lost his internet, but he's back. Okay, Melissa Bowman to everybody. Melissa wants some advice on a glove box lock. So Melissa, can you unmute yourself if you're still on? And let's find out what year and model this is. And
I have a MGB 79.
Okay. Well, there's a catch on the inside, and when you close it, you know that the little thing goes around it, and
Yep.
that catch, which is at the top of the glove box, you can loosen those screws and pull that all the way forward and tighten the screws, and it should be able to lock again if that's the problem that you're having.
This is popped out. Is this what you mean? That
No, that's pretty deep inside. We usually don't get that. We usually don't. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't. I'd have to look at it. I cannot remember how that works. I don't know. I just don't know. There's if it pops apart, it'll pop back together again if you only have the secret, and I don't have it, and I don't know if anyone here is familiar with those locks. That's great. It's the covers a two-part piece. There's plastic on the front, metal on the back, and I know I've had those things apart before, but I cannot remember. I wish I could. So where are you calling from?
outside Boston.
Okay, all right. I don't. There's a website you can go on called britcar.org, B-R-I-T, britcar.org. And that has a state-by-state listing of British car shops. Some of it's out of date, but that might be someplace to go to find somebody around you who does a job. And then there's also another site, a monster site for MGAs on the web called mgaguru.com, G-U-R-U, mgaguru.com. And Barney Gaylord has a list of all shops in the United States that he's found that work on British cars. So on either of those sites, britcar.org or mgaguru.com, you ought to be able to find British there's car shops around, not that they'll know what to do. I can't speak for them. And then there's also a chance that you have a club not too far from where you are, and some club members can be very handy and have done this kind of stuff in a restoration or something. So, and if you want to, you can send me some pictures of that and what's left out of your glove box tomorrow. Just send them to me on text them to me, some pictures of that stuff, and I'll take a look at it when I get some more time and some more detail and see if I can help you out. So those
Great, thank you.
Those are all possibilities. And when all that fails, then you call Paul Deershaw at Sports Car Craftsman in Arvada, Colorado. Hello, Arvada, and ask him for another glove box, and then take that. Maybe he's got a key for it, and then because it's a key by itself, and just change the whole lid. So there's lots of options. And a piece of duct tape, you can always hold it up there with a piece of duct tape. So, okay. All right. Hey, Melissa, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to mute everybody again. It's 8:40. We've got 132 people on. And we're going to go on here to Dale Kramer. I just did my 67. Helped to put the rear about 6 inches higher than the front, and putting them together goes much easier. What in the world were we talking about? Because this is an answer. So Dale, are you still on? Put the rear 6 inches higher, putting them in together. That's doing the clutch. It's doing the clutch. So what Dale's talking about is putting the rear end of the car up so that you can get the engine and gearbox to slide in more easily. That's what his comment is here. Okay, Steve. Steve, hi. I've got a 71B, which I bought in 2015. It was in operating condition. Then I got really busy and haven't run it since. It's been in my garage. What protocol should I follow to bring it back to life? 71B.
Hi, thanks for taking my question.
Yeah, 2015. So the three most important parts of the car are the brakes, the steering, and the brake lights. So before you even start worrying about anything else, make sure the brake pedal is still nice and hard, that the brake master cylinder is full of fluid, .4 brake fluid. And since you're right there, you might as well put some in the clutch also. That's also .4. And then if you got brake problems, of course, you got to attend to those. Turn the ignition on and hit the brakes and just make sure your brake lights come on. Now, when you get it started and you want to go out and drive it, it won't be dangerous on the road. I check the fluids, make sure there's enough antifreeze, enough oil. Check the gearbox. That's from behind the back of the radio console. And there's just enough room to get your first knuckle underneath the dipstick, but you haven't got enough strength in your arm to pull it up. So instead, you want to take a coat hanger, duct tape, all those things work. A coat hanger and make a hook, and hook that gearbox dipstick and pull it out. Now, there are two O-rings on the dipstick. Take the bottom one out. You don't need to. Just makes it a horror trying to get the thing out of there. And then what some people do is leave a rope. Take a piece of twine, wrap it around, put a square knot in it or something or other, and then leave it out so in the future you can pull that rope and get the dipstick out of there. That's a real handy way to do it. Tucker Matawick made me on his lathe the world's fanciest dipstick puller. I still have that, thanks Tucker. And just make sure your gearbox is full of oil, engine oil. Make sure the differential's full of oil. That's GL4, 90 weight. And maybe take the spark plugs out and spin the engine over with a starter motor. It won't go because there's no compression. It'll spin and just watch the oil pressure gauge until you get oil pressure. you can put the plugs back in. Sometimes it helps to beat the fuel pump a little bit, just to let it know it's got to start working. Use your fist. Don't use anything like a hammer. You'll break. It's got plastic parts. You break it. That's just forward of the right rear wheel.
Yep.
And sometimes after a period of storage, if you still have points, the points corrode, just like your grandma's silver. So sometimes it behooves you to take a little tiny piece of sandpaper and fold it over so it's scratchy on both sides. Open up the points by hand, slip this piece of paper in there and drag it out. Do that 4 or 5 times so the points make contact. And then after that, I guess the gasoline is going to be so terrible it isn't going to want to start. If you get
this is the thing I'm worried about the most. You know, with the ethanol and the gasoline sitting in that tank all the time.
So what you could do, just you get some carburetor cleaner or starting fluid, get the car started, or you could take the top of the float bowls off and sop out the gasoline that's in there, and then just fill the float bowls up with fresh gasoline, and put the float bowl lids back on, put the fuel hoses back on. It'll start with the new gasoline, and then the engine will start to be a little tiny bit warm to take the old gasoline and start to burn it through there. I had a car one time that I didn't run it much, didn't run it for a year or two, would not start. You pull the choke all the way out all day and it wouldn't start. Give it a little tiny burst of starter fluid, start right up. And as long as it was hot, it would restart just like a dream, but it would never start by itself with that gas when it was cold. So but once you get it warm, then the gasoline will evaporate well enough to run, and then take it down to the gasoline station and fill it up with 93 octane. And that hotter gasoline, the higher octane, will mix with the lower octane and still give you something that'll run. So
Do you think I should actually drain the entire fuel tank since it's been sitting there for 5 years?
No.
No?
No. If you want to pump half a gallon of gasoline out first with your fuel pump, do that. Just into a can or a bottle. You can instantly see if there's water in there because the water separates. It'll be on the bottom. So.
Yep. All right, good. John, thank you.
All right. Thanks. Oh, Steve, where are you from?
Boston.
Boston. We're heavily New England this time, it seems. I'm going to mute everybody, and we're going to come back to it. Okay, Kurt Johnson had to move to another computer. I will listen later.
John.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was one with the cross member on the gearbox.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Whenever you post that, I'll go ahead and listen to it. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I missed when you were talking about chamfering the bolts. And after that, I missed everything else.
Oh, I only said more that I will put this up on YouTube, but put a thread chaser on the bolts, put a point on them, use a chamfering tool on the gear case, run a 5/16 18 tap in there, clean that out. Leave the butterfly loose, the butterfly that's in the middle, squeeze the bottom of it in your vise, get some long bolts, put those bolts in, and just have them started and have it all nice and loosey-goosey. And then you can get those bolts up in there. This is an overdrive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the harder one. So get the two harder bolts in first. You always put the hardest ones in first. So.
Okay, thanks a lot, John.
Okie doke. All right. I'm going to mute everybody again, and here we go to Don Bueller. Do you have any hints on removing front shocks from a TD? Should I remove the fenders, the front wings? Depends on what kind of shocks they are. Sometimes you have to take the fender off to get the shock off. So only you can tell on your own car. Those are studs. Are those studs or those bolts that hold the shock in place? I think they're studs because you can't lift the shock up. On a B, you can just slide the shock out. It's a lot nicer. Those bolts and those nuts come loose in our complete lubrication, which is over 100 individual things that we did to an MGB. And the service, it was terribly expensive. It was like almost $1,000 by the time I closed the shop, turned it over to Forrest. But it'd take the better part of a day. And there were all these things that we did. And one of the things we did was tighten up the front shock bolts because they do come loose. So, all right, so here we got Steve Smith who's weighing in, and his claim is that the best exhaust systems are made by Maniflow, M-A-N-I-F-L-O-W. I don't know them. I don't know if they're sold in this country. You can buy stuff from England and have it shipped. It isn't a whole lot different than having it shipped from Virginia or California or Kansas. So Maniflow, I've heard the name. I know it's a good name, but I don't know who sells them here.
You've got a great website. The website's very good.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Here we go. We're muting everybody again, and we're going to Mr. Everett. Had a new master cylinder on my TD lock up. Okay, so Everett, you're here. We got a brake problem. We're doing triage here, and brakes are the most important part of the car. So he's not unmuting, but he put a new master cylinder in his TD, and then he says, and then it locked up. Well, I assume he means that the brakes locked up, which means that, yes.
All four wheels locked up.
Okay.
And it had to be the master cylinder because when I cracked the line at the back of the master cylinder, everything turned loose.
Absolutely. And the reason that happened was because you're using silicone brake fluid, yes or no?
No, regular brake fluid.
Okay, all right. Then the reason is that you did not adjust the push rod that goes into the master cylinder. And you're driving around with the brakes just a little bit on. So you've got to go into the pedal box underneath the pedals in front of the master cylinder. There's a trapezoidal plate on the side. Quarter BSF wrench will get all the bolts out, and then there's a nut so it swings so you don't lose the cover. And then you need a short 7/16 British and a short 3/8 British spanner wrench to go in there and hold the push rod, loosen up the lock nut, and then adjust the push rod so you've got 1/2 inch of pedal free play. And this camera is so weird on this thing, you can't, but 1/2 inch of pedal free play. When you press the brake pedal with your forefinger, middle finger, and feel it, it should move just 1/2 inch. Right now it's not moving at all, it's solid because the brakes are on. So that's my guess. It's just your master cylinder push rod that needs adjusting. Does that make sense?
It does. I just hope I didn't burn the clutch out when it locked up. That's a different problem.
Yeah. It's, it just made the brakes bed in, made them work better. Where are you calling from, Everett?
I'm coming from Alpharetta, Georgia.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, I was driving a twin cam, race car, a race twin cam, Lyle York's old Sebring twin cam, and I was driving it home, and we just rebuilt all the brakes, and I think we'd used silicone fluid in it, and I was right in front of Aquinas College on a busy street, and the brakes locked up. I mean, that car would not. I mean, it was like trying to move a boulder. I reach in my pocket, I've got my 1/4 inch BSF wrench, which is the same as 7/16. It fits the bleeder on the brakes. I crack it open, enough fluid comes out to cover my fingernail. That's it. Brakes are free. Continued on. We had to fiddle with that a little bit because it doesn't adjust the same way the TD does. But I've had that happen to myself twice where they've locked up. So both times.
Thank you.
Both times is the pedal push rod. So, all right, I'm gonna mute everybody, and we're gonna go back away from Mr. Everett, back to Melissa and So this is just more about the lock on her glove box, and I know I fixed those, and I didn't fix them a lot. They weren't failing a lot, and I don't remember how I did it. If it was down in front of me, I'd probably be able to do it. So Melissa, good luck. And from John Dykice, Peter Caldwell used to do kingpins too, so great. And here here we have Bob Forsblom is on. I don't know. Are you on right now, Bob from Columbus, Ohio? You still on, Bob Forsblom? Bob says he's still got reamers. Bob does for the midget and the MGB, and he uses them once in a while. So you can contact Bob Forsblom, and he also talks about using a great big motor to test the transmissions before he sends them out to customers. The worst thing about bench work, which is I'll rebuild your fuel pump, your carburetors, your gearbox, your engine, is that I don't get to put it back in your car and make it work. So sometimes the job I've done is faulty, sometimes the installation job you've done is faulty, but in the end it doesn't work, and it's always discouraging. So it's bench work is a real difficult place to be. You do the best job you possibly can, and it turns out that the part that you got from your major supplier that's always been okay is just changed spec and it's no good anymore. And so the job you've done isn't good. Anyway, Bob rolls those things around with a heavy duty motor. So Bob, what's the name of your shop? Tony, what's the name of Bob's shop? Tony Shoviak, you there? Tony, what's Bob Forsblom's shop? You got to unmute yourself.
I don't remember. It used to be Eric
Jones, yeah, Riverside.
Right, Riverside, yes.
Riverside Motors.
Yep.
Something like that. So Bob hasn't brought himself up, but yes, there is an MGB Kingpin reamer in Ohio. So, okay, hey, thanks, Tony.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm muting everybody again, and now we got Brown. I have converted all my MGB transmissions to overdrive and also had other regular spare ones. I can't even give them away. Nobody wants them because they're converting. It's a beautiful gearbox. That MGB gearbox is just, they used to call it bulletproof. It is so durable. It is such a wonderful gearbox. And used ones, if you need a used one, you're going to pay somebody $100 unless they're a friend, or unless you're looking back and you see that they've already got 48 of them and you go, "Why? Come on, dude, give me a break." I gave away, when I moved from my Eastern Avenue location out to Fulton Street, I gave away about 50 all Synchro MGB gearboxes. And by 10 years later, I had most of them back. Whoever the people I gave them to said, "Yeah, I didn't." It turns out you want them back? so yeah, yep. Dale, of course, I want to pronounce it Premier because that's what it looks like, but it's Primer.
Primer. Primer.
Primer. Dale says you can also put horns on the relay so the current doesn't go through the steering wheel button. Of course, that's what I figured there was when Dale, I figured that when that person complained about the horns, the melted horns in a 71, 73, that there was a problem with the horns, so they needed a set of horns, and those air horns come with a relay and instructions and so forth. But yes, you can always put a relay on the horns, on the headlights. Those are all things to make your switches last longer on the dash. I'm going to mute everybody again. Yes, here we go. Okay. And so now I've got David Farrell. What brand of bushings do you recommend for the front and rear suspension replacement? Well, let's see, you can unmute yourself, David Farrell, if you're still here. And
I'm here.
I like the red ones. I don't know what they're made of. I don't know. I just.
You know who makes them?
They're available from Moss, probably Victoria.
Okay.
You know, they're red. There's black ones. I think the black ones squeak more easily. The red ones don't squeak quite as badly as the red ones don't squeak as badly as the black ones. They come with some.
Are one of them harder?
They are harder. They are harder.
Or one set a lot harder. The blacks are harder than the reds. So the
I
reds
think
are
the
harder than
black is harder than the red. I think you know, there's a reason that there's rubber bushings in your suspension, and that is to isolate you from the road. And why not use needle bearings? You know, I mean, if you want to be tight, you know, I mean, use needle bearings. So your teeth would get chipped driving. So you know, I'll go a little better, you know, but you can use the V8 bushings in front on the A-arms, and most of the rubber shock bushings that go on the top are just fine. You know, and the rubber bushings that go on the sway bar are just fine. You know, on the rear axle, the red ones, I'd go for those before I went for replacement rubber ones.
Okay. And then one other side question, I'm putting I have an early overdrive transmission for my 66. It came out of, I think, a 64.
Okay.
And I bought one of the from Moss, I bought an adapter, one of those adapter bushings. So you can put, because I guess the input shaft is smaller. Does that work? Is that a good way to do that? Or is that, and I have the flywheel also.
Yep,
from the 64.
You have a 5-main engine, and you have a 3-main first motion shaft. That's the problem. Yeah, you can buy the bushing from Moss. Yep.
And I already have, and then I'm going to use the original, the 64 flywheel too on the 5-main, or do I want to use my 66 flywheel?
The flywheel from the 3-main, was that a 3-main engine?
I believe it was.
Yeah, so the flywheel won't fit.
It won't fit anyway. Okay, because they seem like there's several different flywheels. Because I got a whole mini warehouse full of parts, and it's kind of like we're
the flywheel,
like a Revell model kit with no instructions.
The flywheel that you want is got 6 bolt holes and 2 locator holes.
Okay.
Okay, and the width of the, if you look at the flywheel on the edge, the width of the tooth on the edge is about 3/4 of an inch, whereas the 68 through 80 flywheels have a much shorter tooth,
Okay.
The gear. If you send me pictures, I'm going to tell you exactly what you got. Call me and we.
Okay. What about the clutch? Which clutch? Do I just get the clutch for a 66?
MGB clutch. And there's trouble right now. There still is, I guess, with MGB clutches. Not so much with the pressure plate and the release bearing, or the pressure plate and the disc, but the throwout bearing. And the throwout bearing is, the original ones are carbon, like grade 8 carbon. You can write on a cardboard box if you do that. And they're a ring, and they heated up a steel holder so it expanded, dropped the carbon into it, and when it cooled, it grabbed that carbon. Well, something's gone funky with the way they're making them now, and the carbon starts to spin inside them. And once the carbon starts spinning, it comes apart, and that might happen at 220, 200, 2,000 miles. Really frustrating, because then you got to take it all back apart again. And I don't know. Roller bearings, I'm not a fan of roller bearings because they don't belong here. But they are right now better than the bad carbon release bearings.
Really?
So just ask around. When you're ordering, find out, get somebody on the other line to promise you that this is a good throwout bearing, or ask around in the trade. Where are you calling from?
Texas. Houston, San Antonio, Texas now.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's Kip? Kip's in Dallas, isn't he? KIP, Kip imported?
Don't know.
He doesn't do a lot of MG stuff, but I'm just trying to think of somebody in the trade to ask and see what the scoop is right now. But there have been problems. And, you know, if there's a window winder handle that breaks, big deal, but that's
yeah,
so
you don't have to pull Humpty Dumpty apart.
Yeah.
John, we had one of those throwout bearings explode after a month just up here the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you calling from, Brad?
Oh, Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah, my guess is they're all coming from the same place. I mean, offhand. And I know at the end, there were still some that weren't the new ones in boxes, and people were getting $150 for just the throwout bearing, which seems like
really
price, but compared to taking the engine and gearbox back out again, or taking the engine back out again to change it, you know, sure, I'll pay it. So ask around. Just be aware that that's an issue.
Okay. All right. Is there a way to tell the new old stock that's better? Is it a certain vendor that's making it?
AP is good. I talked about
okay.
Basil Adams. You might Google Basil Adams, BASIL, Basil Adams, and maybe he's got them. But be prepared to pay. So
okay.
That's just the way it is on that part right now.
Well, I'd rather pay once than pay twice.
Yes, you got that right. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
All right, David, it's a pleasure. Thanks. Brad, thanks for checking in. I'm going to mute all again, and we're at 9:05, but I've still got more questions, so I'll keep talking until 9:30, or until we're down to just a handful of people left. I couldn't believe it. You know, those in their day, all those national conventions, there were people out in the parking lot drinking and having a good time until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was in Solvang 3 years ago at the MGA meet, and Dave, where's the name tag? Says famous Dave on it. Dave and I were the only ones left wandering at 11 o'clock at night, you know, with beers. It's like, it's changed so much. Anyway, we are speaking of sway bars. I'm rebuilding a 70. This is from Brown, and he says I'm putting sway bars on a 73 VGT. He's putting a Camaro V6 engine in it. I've already rebuilt the front suspension completely. On the rear, I've done new plastic bushings and springs. I also have tube shocks in the back. Would there be any advantage of putting in rubber bumper rear sway bar? No, can't do it. Rear sway bars tear out. The body had huge ears welded onto it, 77 through 80. And any attempt to make a sway bar fit the rear of the car, there's nothing you can bolt to that's got enough durability to hold the twisting the torque that sway bar is under, and it just tears out. So I wouldn't worry about it. If you got a 5/8 bar in the front, that'll be good enough. And that V8 engine, V6 engine probably doesn't weigh a lot more than the existing engine, so I'm sure it'll handle well. So, and that was Brown. Are you on? Did you want to unmute yourself? We're down to 97 participants. So, all right, we're down to Dave Walters. Yeah, I've got to talk about drinking. My voice is getting hoarse. Dave Walters. I have a 52 TD with a clanking noise when the drive shaft is rotating. The grease zerk doesn't appear to be hitting, but that's what it sounds like. It's coming from the front of the drive shaft. So drive shaft noises, clanking, stuff like that is completely wrong, of course. I know we've installed seat belts, which would hit the drive shaft midway. We've installed seat belts before and the bolts have stuck out too far and you go around a corner and the drive shaft touches those bolts. You're aware that there's a problem. Makes a lot of noise. The clanking noise could be because the rear flange on the gearbox is loose. That happens a lot on T-type gearboxes. It could be the bolts are loose between the flange and the drive shaft. I don't think the slip joint would give you a clanking sound. A bad U-joint would give you a clanking sound. Sometimes noises travel and you think it's coming from there and it's not. So you're going to check the rear U-joint and the rear bolts too. So beyond that, I can't think of anything except a visual inspection, and that's hard to do. And if you do go for a visual inspection, you want to have the car supported on the rear axle and the front suspension, so the car's sitting naturally, and so the wheels aren't hanging. Not that the front wheels would make any difference, but the rear wheels, it might make a difference where that axle is in relation to the drive shaft. When you go to look, you want it when you're looking to see what the problem is.
Yeah, it appears that it's hitting in the transmission tunnel up by the like I said, by the front zert there. And like you said, when it's suspended, you don't hear it because it's dropped down apparently. And I've changed the zert and I've tried to visually see where it's hitting, but it's hard to see up in there too. And I've tried to take a pry bar and kind of move, because when I got this thing, I got it from Arizona. It was a basket case. And so when I put the transmission tunnels and stuff on there, maybe I got them offset a little bit, but I don't know how that would happen, but it could, but that's where the sound sounds like it's coming from. And somebody said it, sometimes you had they put a longer zert in there by accident.
Yeah, that just breaks off though.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's not the problem because it didn't break, but it makes them
on a TD. The long tunnel goes in first, and then the floorboards. Do the floorboards go in first, or does the transmission tunnel go on first?
Well, that was the question too, because I've asked a couple people, and they said that basically that the floorboards went on top of the transmission tunnel went in first, then the floorboards on top of it, and then the second one, the tunnel on the back goes in on top of the boards.
No, the back one goes on the underside.
I think the front one goes on the top of the floorboards, I believe. I think that's what mine is.
The tunnel in front goes on top of the floorboards?
Yes. I'm pretty sure.
We just did mine in the
I just put floorboards on floorboards in, and the tunnel goes on top. Oh, the tunnel goes underneath floorboards, and then
under the front floorboards
goes on top.
Well, I was just trying to see if maybe there's something going on with the metal in there. But usually, if something's hitting, it leaves a clean spot, that you can find. So anyway, those are just all the things that I could think of. And then you can take the tunnel. Oh, sure, this is easy. Just take the gearbox tunnel off and go out and drive it. Although I was out at Forrest's shop the other day, Rusty Moose Garage, and he was talking about driving a Healy with a tunnel off it, and it's got a big flange, and it's about that far from your elbow. It's spinning, at engine speed. It's like pretty creepy. He said he was too afraid to go out and drive it without the tunnel on it. Didn't want to get his clothes snagged in it,
So just to be sure here again now, the front tunnel goes on top of the floorboards or underneath?
That's the consensus tonight from this group. That leaves me an out, right? Okay. Everybody else is wrong. Horst Schock has got a book, restoration book, and I don't know if he has it in there. Call down to, he just does TC stuff, but so much of that stuff is the same. You can, From the Frame Up in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yep, I've got their book.
All right, well, you just give them a call and ask them too.
Okay.
So I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. I don't know.
That's okay. I appreciate it. You always have some good answers anyway, so.
Thanks.
So, and I'm in Traverse City.
Okay. Hey, great. Okay. Great.
Thank you again. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm gonna mute everybody. I see Tom Snook. Tom Snook sent me, I got those today, Tom. I got the owner's handbooks and the confidential repair times. Get an MGB
That's
engine.
what I thought the tunnel. I'm pretty sure I've got mine underneath.
The
I thought it was
the factory time for getting an engine in and out to do a clutch, factory time on an MGB, 4.35 hours. Yeah, well, even when the cars are new, I don't think you could do it quite that fast. So I'm going to take a couple more here. We've got Scott Lynn. Has anyone put together a list of MG parts suppliers for particular models, rebuilding services, used parts, etc., like a giant database that's all in one place that would be extremely useful? I have a little one on my website, University Motors. Say, while you're going there, hit the PayPal button. And I think it says resources or something, and it's for around Grand Rapids too, because it's got where to get keys redone and where to get the radiator repaired and sandblasting and stuff like that. But I never did that because I was in the trade, and I bought my stuff from some places, and I didn't want to. Anyway, I never did that, and maybe it's something that needs to be done, Scott Lynn. Why don't you do that and have it ready for the 1st of September, which is the next Tuesday, which is our next meeting. So
I'll work on it.
Scott sent me a private note here. He said he will have it all done and copies available for. No, he didn't say that. But anyway, yeah, that would be a great idea. Because my daughter bought a 73 BGT and we're working on it. Going to use it for primary transportation, and she's looking, and she's real good on the web and finding places, and she said, well, what about this place? I said, yeah, the stuff's great, but you can't get it. You talk to the guy and it doesn't get shipped. So there's those kinds of comments that, of course, you can't put out in the public forum because they're not complimentary and nobody likes, that's kind of creepy. So anyway, but a list of everybody that's out there that would do stuff would be really nice. So, Scott Lynn, you got your work set out for you this next fortnight. We didn't talk about time today. I'm going to mute everybody again, and now we're going to Frank French, who says he uses a thick zip tie on top of his gearbox dipstick. And that sticks up. The problem is there's a bung that fits in the hole there, and if you get anything that's loose like a rope, it's going to end up falling down underneath, and then you got to fish down there with your fingers and so forth. So here's from Paul to everyone, and this probably has to do with the comments that we were having before about the car that was running too hot, the 205-degree check with an infrared thermometer. And Paul says, will an oil cooler impact coolant temperature? Yes, it will. But I have my questions. I mean, the car was made this way, but you got the radiator here and the air is going through the radiator. And then you take a section out in front of that radiator and you put an oil cooler. So some of the hot air that's going to go through the oil cooler is going to go through the radiator. Now, the later model cars, 74.5, the rubber bumper cars, you can mount the oil coolers down underneath. That's really handy until, of course, you hit a parking abutment and it breaks it off, and then you have to have your car towed. But that gets a whole different supply of air there. But oil coolers will make a difference, can make a difference, but they did drop them off in the 75 model year from the standard there was a place to fit them, but they weren't standard equipment. Probably because of the cost, but they didn't need them anymore either with that more modern 18V engine. That's a really, really good engine. It just didn't get hot like the earlier ones did. So wherever Paul is, that's a comment on that. Mike Palin, are you still around, Mike? Are you still on there?
I'm here, John.
Okay, so Mike says, is there any reason not to put a battery disconnect switch on the negative terminal in a positive ground MGA? Most everybody just puts it on the ground side, but you can put it on the hot side, you can put it on the ground side, the whole.
It only fits the negative terminal. That's the trouble.
Oh, all right. Okay. So use it there. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question was about the Lucas parts. Are they really Lucas in the UK? Do you know? I mean, I just bought this three terminal ignition switch for an early MGB, and the keys have nothing written on them, even though the picture shows Lucas when I bought it.
So my simple understanding of corporate is that the Lucas name still has value. Someone owns the Lucas name. I don't know who. Cecilia at Scarborough Fair would know. So someone owns the Lucas name, and they will then let you use the Lucas name on anything you want for any reason if you pay them. So that's why it says Lucas on the box.
Okay, but I sort of sense that England has a much better supply of these parts than the US.
You can get stuff shipped out of England. You can get out of Brown and Gammons. That's a real nice place. There's the Beehive. There's Moss England. Well, I mean, if Moss America doesn't have it, why would Moss England have it? Because they don't even share some of those same part numbers sometimes. And then there's the MG Owners Club in Swayze, just north of Cambridge. And all those places, I mean, they're real. It used to be in the olden days that you'd order a battery and carburetor needles, and you'd get this box shipped, a dry battery, and carburetor needles just floating around loose next in the paper. Remember that striped paper that was so common in England for packing, and it would and it looked like if the postman had to take it to the next house, the whole box would fall apart. But today, it's all modern. It's all the shipping's great, and it comes lightning fast. Moss has, I think, last I heard, as much as a 2-week backup out of their Virginia shipping facility, and if you can get it just as fast from England, assuming, of course, that they haven't taken the mailbox away from your house.
No. Well, we're in a sort of GOP territory, sadly, but I mean, it's, I don't know. Anyway, thank you, John.
Hey, you're very welcome. Very well. And where are you calling from, Mike? I can't remember.
Well, it's Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yes, thank you. You told me that before, and I forgot. So I'm going to mute everybody, and we're going to come down to MGB Mans. Yeah, the MGB tried to start itself. The starter spins when the key is turned off. Okay. Is MGB Man still here?
Yes, John, I'm here.
What year?
It's a 74.
Okay.
And what happens is when I turn the key off, all of a sudden the starter will engage and start spinning the motor. And the other night, it did it all by itself during the night, and it did some damage in the garage because the car was in gear.
Okay. All right. So the 74, do you have a seatbelt interlock system on that car? Do you know?
I believe it's all been disconnected.
Well, maybe it's been disconnected, but not properly. Because there's just no way in the world that turning the key off can turn the starter motor on. There's just no way, unless some wiring has been attached to stuff it shouldn't have been, or the seatbelt interlock unit is still in there, and there's a plug with about 7 wires. This thing is located behind the console.
Okay.
If you call me tomorrow or email me, I'll send you a wiring diagram for your car, but send me your VIN.
Okay.
And I'll send you the wiring because see, you buy some of the books, Bentley books, and who's the guy that makes the Prospero's Garage, makes the nice colorful things, but every year has a different wiring system slightly. Japan is different from France, is different from England, is different from the US. So
I did notice on the plug to the switch that somebody, a previous owner, had run a wire from the red wire, which I think is the starter wire, over to the relay, the starter relay.
Okay, so I can help you get this sorted out. Yeah, so there's.
I've had the car for 27 years, and this is the first time it's happened.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! That's such
John,
yes.
I have a 72 that started itself and drove into the garage door while I wasn't in the garage. I had just I changed the starter relay because I was getting, I'd get in and I'd turn the key and it would click the first time, and then I'd try it again and it would start up just fine. And I had swapped the starter with a spare I had. And so I got a new starter relay from Moss, and I put it in there, and this happened. I heard it, it was middle of the afternoon. I heard it. Luckily, it didn't damage the car, dented my door, but so I cut it off because it was in gear, so it kind of drove into the door. So I took the relay out, and when I measured across the contacts, there was a dead short there. So it's like the relay failed and just shorted it, just shorted the starter.
It could be that too.
So I put the old relay back on, and it's back to working fine. It clicks occasionally, but
Whenever there's extra wiring, it makes me suspect because someone didn't understand how something was done most of the time, and they just fiddle with it until they made it work. But it might be that it's the starter relay. It's a single pole, single throw, normally open relay. Japanese cars use about 30 of them in their cars. I mean, they're just the most common relay. How can you have a bad one?
The one I changed was the original, so it's 48 years old.
Yeah. If it's still a rectangular one,
that's what mine is.
You can take a pair of pliers and uncrimp the edges, take the cover off, go in there, clean the points, blow it out, adjust it a little bit by hand, so you can see that it works, put it all back together again. So I love this old stuff. My standard line is anything original rebuilt is better than something new. It's not always the case. You aren't going to rebuild your front brake pads or your headlights. You can buy new ones, but oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. It isn't just us either. It's everybody, Model A guys, everybody I hear has trouble with this kind of stuff because of where the parts come from. And all the suppliers are in a battle for the market, and the market is determined by sales, and the sales are guided by the price of components. So if you see a part in one catalog and it's $10, and you see that same part in another catalog and it's $15, you will always buy the $10 part, okay? And regardless of its condition. So it's our fault that the parts are so crummy, because that's the way capitalism works. It's like whoever can provide the product for the least amount of money wins. But the problem is the quality, and I wouldn't mind paying double what we pay for anything if it was factory good, worked at the outset. I was in the business 45 years. I can't begin to tell you how many faulty parts resulted in me having to cover for my customer a tow, an engine replacement, another clutch. It's so frustrating.
Well, I did find a new old stock relay, starter relay, so I put that in today. The problem doesn't seem to be happening. I did order a new ignition switch too. I'm waiting for that to come in, just as a safety.
Okay.
Because I know it had a cheap Chinese ignition switch in it.
Just if you do any of your own soldering, look at the wires where they come off the switch right up, right at the key switch, and go down to the loom. And if any of them seem weak in solder, resolder them so it doesn't fall apart 100 miles away from your shop and you have to have it towed back to your shop.
Yeah. And like I said, I've had the car 27 years, and this is the first time I've had any kind of problem like this with it.
Well, that's not bad. That's not bad. But it's a problem. So maybe it's just a relay. So hope so. So
well, thank you, John. I appreciate your help.
Where are you calling from?
Pittsfield, Mass. Another New Englander.
Oh my. Okay. Okay. Right. So let's see. Just a minute here. We are going on. It's 9:30. It's 9:30. I could sit here and talk on. We still got 84 people suffering
John? John?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I use this to get the let's see if I get it focused, to get the dipstick out on the gearboxes.
Yeah.
It's a little thing you buy at Harbor Freight. One other thing though, if you bought an MG 1100, you don't have to worry about checking the gearbox. It's all done in one swoop.
Engine oil is gearbox oil. That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Same,
not exactly the best design. Thank you.
Yeah. Same with a Mini and everything. Yep. Well, anyway, gentlemen, ladies,
thanks, John.
Here I've got. Oh my gosh. Here we got. It's Cologne from Sydney, Australia. I've got to answer this. Are you still on? I mean, isn't it like 3 days from now in Australia?
Hi, John. Yes, I'm on. Yeah. Hi. Good day on.
Okay, so he's asking what's the best way to replace the gearbox mounts and the engine mounts on a 72B. So the right-hand mount on the 72B is engine mounts, a dream. Get the alternator out of the way and put a board underneath the engine. Here it would be a 2x4. Don't know what you have in Australia. Jack, you put a little tension on the engine and disconnect the mount. Maybe do both of them at the same time. That'd be easy. And in the rear, you want to drop the whole cross member off. But when you do that, the rear end of the gearbox should fall and hit the frame member. But sometimes the exhaust and or the drive shaft prevent it from going there, and it's putting unusual strain on the drive shaft and the exhaust. So you should disconnect the drive shaft, disconnect it back at the differential. It's easier back there. And drop the exhaust at the center mount and the rear mount, and just wire it up loosely. Just some mechanics wire coat hanger or something or other. Then you can drop the cross member, get the whole cross member off. You don't have to worry about inside; it'll all work. Just lower it down and replace all those pieces. And if you run, when we were talking about the butterfly on the inside and there's some donuts that they are this big around and they go into a hole that's as big around as my finger. It's just a marvel how you can do it, but you can do it with Vaseline. And someone wrote to me and said, "Oh, I use the rope trick." I don't know what the rope trick is, but sounds maybe like putting glass in. So anyway, so that's the deal. So I think I'm doing a Zoom session with your Sydney group sometime around the 1st of September. They told me the only thing I had to do was get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so that I could meet their 7 o'clock meeting time. So.
Looking forward to that, John. Thank you very much.
Hey, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Anyway, so that's if I just saw that, and I think anyone from Australia. So I'm going to unmute, and we can all chatter amongst ourselves for a little bit, and maybe couple minutes from now, I will close it down. So Tom Snook, nice to see you. Tony, nice to see you. You know, Severio, I see your.
Still here. Yeah.
Feeling it's nice. Thanks. So Doug Clark, nice to see you there. Thank you. Thanks. And
good night, John. Enjoyed
Bill
it.
Roseveare, thank you.
Yes, thank you, John.
Good night, John.
Thanks, John.
you.
Thanks a lot,
Cheers.
John.
Cheers, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Schuler, nice to see you.
Thank you, John.
Yep. Say hi to your dad.
John, thank you very much. I phoned you and asked for information about an engine that hadn't been run for ages, and it was exhausting out the manifold into the carbon chamber.
Okay.
And you just said run a hose out the whole car, out the bottom, and let the rings reset.
Yeah.
Because it had been sitting for so long, and that worked. It did drive up the compression.
You know,
so
it's,
that did work.
You know, you always do the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first, and that's so when you're gonna go on MG Enthusiast and you say, oh, I've got the squeak from my right front wheel, there's 2,000 answers from everything that you need a new engine or you need a new garage, or you know, it just goes on and on and on. But I you know, I've been on the floor and I've seen this stuff, so.
Just something else. Have you ever watched that Evans thing? An MG is Born. It's
Yes.
out of Britain. There's
Yes.
a really good section on the differential and how to pull the seals off of the end of the crankshaft of the drive shafts, and then how to pull the drive shafts out of the gears so you can get in there and put the shims in. And it worked really, really well. So if anybody's looking for just to watch that, it's a really good video.
And that's on YouTube. And what do you look under?
It's called An MG is Born.
Okay.
And it's by a guy whose last name is Evans. But if you just put An MG is Born.
Other kids come on the campus.
Okay, well, it's getting pretty noisy here, so I'm gonna say hi to Bob Forsblom. Thanks for being here, Bob. And Phil Ryan, nice to see you here.
Goodbye, John from Ann Arbor.
Hey, okay.
Hi, John.
Good night,
Okay.
John from Windsor, Ontario.
Hey, I can hardly wait till they get the border open again. This is craziness.
You mean Joe? I have parts waiting over in Michigan.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, ladies, gentlemen, thank you very kindly.
John, thank you very much from Cleveland, Mississippi.
Mississippi. All right. Yep. What state is the flower child's bride? Mississippi. Okay.
Thanks, John. Bob Miller from Carlsbad, California.
Oh my gosh. Good. Hey, well, oh my gosh, you guys have got forest fires and everything going on, so.
Yes.
John, it wasn't that long ago I lived in Dorr, just south of you.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Good seeing you, John. I'm flying out to Michigan tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, Dorr, Michigan. That was the easternmost site of a World War II Japanese bombing. Was in North Dorr, and I think it was in May or June of '45. Long story, but if you look up Japanese North Dorr, Michigan, you get an attack.
Well,
pretty
being
interesting.
a Michigan guy, you probably know where Burnips is. I
Know
was
where
just
what?
south of Burnips. Burnips.
Yeah, sure. Yep, I know where Burnips is. Yep. Well, anyway, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you,
Mississippi.
one and all.
Hi, John.
And it's a pleasure. We're still down to 36, so, and I still got 44 messages. I'm real sorry. So, anyway, thanks a lot.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you
From
all.
Boston.
Dallas.
See you in September.